So thank you again, Steve, for joining me for a call this afternoon. I know this is likely a very busy day for you as the state kind of reopens partially for restaurants. We've got a lot of restaurant owners from Southern Arizona and business owners on this Zoom call. So wanted to make sure that we got a chance to ask you any questions. My name, for those that don't know me, I'm Marquez Peterson, and I serve on the Arizona Corporation Commission, and we regulate your utilities and telecommunications to a certain point and handle business incorporation. And I'm the former president of the Tucson Hispanic Chamber for about the last 10 years. And I certainly have known Steve for many years in his role, because Steve, if I recall, you've been at the Arizona Restaurant Association serving as their president for more than 18 years. Is that correct?
That's right. They haven't thrown me out yet.
That's great. And then he's also a supervisor for Maricopa County. So a county supervisor. So he wears many hats throughout the state. And I thought it'd be great to hear your perspective. I know I myself, and probably you also, Steve, have participated in a number of webinars over the last several months or couple months as people have talked about what does COVID-19 mean to our business, and then how do we recover from this. I've read so many social media posts and articles that relate to this, and I know everybody's concerned. Is now too soon to reopen? Is it not soon enough? I think Governor Ducey has handled these challenges quite well from my perspective, and that he's really trying to listen to the medical and healthcare professionals as he's deciding kind of the risk Arizona takes in reopening. But I know you're in the Phoenix area, Maricopa County. I live in Pima County in the southern part of our state. So I think between the two of us, we might have an interesting perspective as we talk about the recovery of Arizona. Is there anything you'd like to add to your introduction?
Well, thank you, Leah, and I appreciate you hosting this. And yes, between the two counties, we comprise obviously a lot of the state. And this has really been a punch to the gut, to say the least. I like to say that COVID-19 treats its friends and enemies the same. It really devastates both. And what many people don't understand, as just a quick overview, is that Arizona's restaurant industry, our economy, last year was $13.4 billion strong. And that's just people going and eating in restaurants and dining out. We employ roughly 230,000 people across Arizona with a payroll that amounts to about $14 million per day. So this has hit us abundantly hard. Of course, there's been loss of life. We don't need to talk about the unfortunate consequences of COVID-19. It has hurt the industry greatly, especially at a time of year when we are needing the money most.
Right, certainly. And if you could move a little closer to your phone, Steve, I think it was a little light, hard to hear you. A little bit better.
Okay, I'll turn it up here. Hope that's better.
And I think since I know mid-March or so, our Arizona Corporation Commission hosted a meeting March 16th to talk about our emergency preparedness from our utility companies. So we regulate electricity, water, wastewater, gas, telecommunications to a certain perspective. And we needed to hear from all those companies related to how they plan to keep their customers safe and certainly their employees safe. They've committed not to disconnect, not to charge late fees. I've been working nonstop on kind of customer relief efforts and low income discounts and just all kinds of different programs. And I know a lot of folks certainly focused on their families and residents, but the small business community, I think, has been so hard hit, and so many of our restaurants fall into that space. Can you talk a little bit about the restaurant industry and how I'm sure it relates to your Maricopa County Supervisor position also, and any relief restaurant owners might have been able to find beyond utility that I can talk more about?
Well, and thank you to you and your colleagues for doing that, Leah. That's great help, as you know. And we've seen several different things. First and foremost, we, through the generosity of our suppliers throughout Arizona to the restaurant industry, we're able to raise over $325,000 or so to help our displaced workforce. I mentioned to you just a few minutes ago that our daily payroll was $14 million. That's been reduced about $3 million per day. We've laid off about 65 to 70% of our employees, and they were hurting. They were hurting very badly, just like many other Arizonans were who lost their job as a side effect or an unintended consequence, unfortunately, of COVID-19. That all being said, we created Arizona Restaurant Strong. And essentially what that comprises is it's a simple form to fill out. If you are currently receiving unemployment, if you were at your employer for 6 months or longer, of course, in the restaurant industry, then you would be eligible for a $500 grant. And we were proud to say that we were able to turn that around within like 72 hours of applying. So we were trying to be as nimble, agile, and quick as we could. And so we helped a lot of displaced workers in our industry across Arizona, places that I didn't know existed, from Ajo to Sierra Vista to Tucson to the Phoenix area up in Flagstaff. It was really a crisscross of the state, which was really terrific. Now we're seeing some municipalities, for example, like Mesa, I believe Scottsdale, Phoenix, and others who are offering some grants out to small businesses, in particular restaurants. They can range in size from $1,000 to $10,000, but we're learning more about that. That just came about late last week, and we're going to make sure we get it out to all of our restaurateurs.
Yeah, and I know top of mind for both of us with our different official hats on was certainly the payroll protection program. And with my former role at the Hispanic Chamber, I heard from so many small businesses that were so frustrated that certainly the media stories that it was going to larger companies was frustrating. How to work through your local bank, your contacts if you didn't have existing relationships. I was trying to look up prior to our call right now how much Arizona received, and I can see at least through mid-April we had about $5 billion in PPP loans come to our state, about 20,000 loans. And there was a ranking that we were number 15 in the nation. Are you hearing from restaurant owners? Are they receiving some of those loans, or do you think they're disadvantaged in any way from receiving that type of assistance?
No, they have been receiving some of the loans. We have heard from several of our restaurateurs who have explained to us that, yes, it's great to have these dollars. There were some hiccups or some unintended consequences associated with having to hire back so many of your employees in order to meet the certain metrics to qualify. So that gave pause to many of our restaurateurs because, as you know, as we're starting to reopen our dining rooms, you're not going to need the full level of staffing that you once had. So we've been working with Congress and looking to try to solve some of those problems, but it was absolutely a much needed relief valve for many restaurateurs in getting those funds.
Yeah, what's interesting too, I know an organization down here in Southern Arizona, the Community Investment Corporation, is doing small business loans also. And they'd had a seminar or webinar just recently because so many business owners are struggling to bring back employees who are making the unemployment checks that had an additional $600 from the federal government attached to them. So I think it's $840 a week those on unemployment receive, which in some cases at the restaurants was much more than they were receiving as waiters or waitresses and so on. And so I know there's been a lot of talk on how do you bring back your employees, whether it's through a PPP requirement or just simply for these softer openings that are occurring across the state. Are you hearing that concern also?
Very, very much so, especially early on. Let's go back about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We were very concerned about that because we were in effect making more than they were while working in restaurants. Not across the board, especially when you factor in tips and everything. It probably would still behoove someone to work their job instead of just taking the time off and collecting unemployment. We looked at different mechanisms with DES and Congress to say if someone is offered their job back and they refuse, then they should no longer be able to utilize or receive unemployment benefits. And of course, they agreed that this was not meant to just keep people from having to work and enjoy some time off at the courtesy of the federal government. Here's what's interesting, though, that we have found just in the recent week as restaurants prepare to reopen, that this has not really come to a reality for us. That many of our employees are saying, we're excited to come back. We want to come back. So while it's a concern and a very big one, it hasn't forced itself into the daily life as we see it as we start to reopen restaurants, which I'm hoping for is a good sign in that remains the constant as we move forward and reopen the dining rooms across Arizona.
Okay, yeah, and I think we're going to see more and more of that as different types of businesses open. I was looking back at my notes too. I think May 4th, retail was able to open for some window service or drive-through service. And then certainly restaurants today for a bit of in dining, dining in service. And I know I was looking at a social media post by the Flores family, who owns El Charo and many other restaurants down here in southern Arizona. And I think Ray Flores put together a 100-point safety plan or something of that sort. I can imagine, I'm not a restaurant owner, but I can imagine the safety precautions folks are trying to put in place to keep their employees safe, their customers safe, and everything. I've seen creative things online, from shower curtains between tables to spacing to masks and all kinds of things. Are you hearing from a lot of different folks, or are they reaching out to you for advice on safety precautions they must be taking at this time?
Most definitely. And of course, as you know, we worked with Governor Ducey's office and his team to make sure we could come up with something that makes the most sense. As you know, and as a very talented restaurateurs in Tucson know, every restaurant is different. And you do not have a one-size-fits-all type of mentality in an operational standpoint for a restaurant. So when others were saying, oh, you should only come out with 50% occupancy, or these random arbitrary numbers, we wanted to make sure we didn't go down that path in talking with the governor's office, because some dining rooms can accommodate 65% of capacity, where others might only be able to do 35%. So we didn't want to hamstring anyone that could safely accommodate their guests in their dining rooms without violating any type of distancing between guests and employees, etc. So what we did is we obviously worked with the governor's office on guidelines that were pragmatic and would allow us to open our dining rooms in the safest of ways. That was released last Monday. We worked as an association and talked to our hundreds, if not thousands of members, trying to get feedback, working with our board of directors to come up with kind of an addendum to what the governor's office put out. Here are some other things that you should look at and possibly do. They made those available. I have not seen what Mr. Flores put out. I've heard about it. And of course, the Flores family knows what they're doing when it comes to restaurants, and they're a very talented group of individuals in Tucson and knowing how to operate restaurants. So whatever is in their plan, I'm sure would make sense. But I also want to make sure that restaurateurs don't know me, and I apologize for this long answer, that they don't overcomplicate it. Some of our folks were looking at, well, is this all we need to do? Do we need to do more? You need to do what's appropriate for your restaurant and accommodating your guests, your frequent guests who come into your restaurant on a weekly basis or a few times a week, to make sure that they're going to have that sense of safety, comfort, and enjoy the atmosphere there as long as it's good.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. For those that might have just joined us, I want to remind you, we're talking to Steve Chucri, who's the president of the Arizona Restaurant Association. He also is a supervisor for Maricopa County, and getting his take on the reopening of Arizona and kind of economic recovery. Wanted to ask you, Steve, we had a couple questions come in on Q&A, and there's some similar. We've got from one of our those on the phone right now is a question about whether Pima County or any county has the right to supersede Governor Ducey's orders and add additional restrictions on restaurants by temporarily changing the county health code. Has that come before you yet?
The question has come up. It's something that we worked with Governor Ducey's office on as well, because it would make no sense to have the governor set forth these recommendations to reopen kitchens and then have some cities say, no, we're not doing it. We've spoken with several mayors across the state, including your mayor in Tucson, Romero, and they have been very accommodating, trying to understand what we're going through, what we're trying to do. And it's been very, very productive by way of conversations and implementation. And we look forward to continuing to work with them to make sure we understand their concerns. But at this time, Leah, as we understand it, what the governor has put out through his executive order is the law of the land, and a city could try to do something differently, but they would not have the legal authority to do it. Now, some cities have talked about challenging that in court, but I don't think we're in an environment right now where anyone wants to sue anyone. So we're we're trying to work with those cities to make sure if they have individual concerns, let us know what they are. For example, I met with the Flagstaff mayor just last week. We're going to do a webinar in a few weeks to talk with her constituents and others who have concerns. So we want to be as open as we can, but also hear from people as to what we can do to make their dining experience more enjoyable during this difficult time.
So I would imagine at this point, for those on the call, if they have questions about modifications being made to a county health department, it really would speak to their county supervisor. And in this case, it'd be a Pima County supervisor. Would that be the best advice?
I think so. I believe that they can come out with guidelines that make sense. I don't think they can mandate it. That would take some rulemaking authority, and I'm assuming that the county board of supervisors wanted to change some things, they certainly could within reason. But if it runs counter to what the governor's guidelines are, it could be a unique circumstance to be decided in the courts, or just to see how it may play out administratively.
Yeah, certainly. And I think also to the future of, I guess, small business in Arizona, or even the restaurant industry. At the Arizona Corporation Commission, we manage business and corporation. And I asked our corporations division just a few weeks ago, tell me what's the difference between April 2019 and April 2020. And it's pretty dramatic, as you can imagine. We average about 5,000 new business and corporations a month. And last month we did 2,000. So, I mean, as people are trying to project which businesses will survive, who's got the cash flow to keep going, you know, how many restaurants will be there in 6 months or a year? I don't think any of us quite know that answer. But are you hearing about particular restaurants closing, or is everything still up in the air now? Is there any kind of, I guess, tracking from any business organization on the impact of COVID yet on the business industry?
Well, we have seen roughly 6 to 8% of restaurants close, and they will likely be closed permanently.
How was that? 8?
I'm sorry?
What percent was it?
That was about 6 to 8%.
Wow. So hopefully that's not the case with, I know we've got many restaurant owners on the call right now, and I know most of the restaurants and so on that they represent. And one mentioned in the Q&A that today was their first day of opening and they got quite a few reservations. I've also heard from business owners the challenge in staffing up right now and preparing and not knowing what the demand will be or the need, because a lot of families are uncertain. Some feel comfortable with starting to dine in and others do not and want to hold off until a few more weeks. And so that's particularly hard, I think, on restaurants who are trying to estimate the number of diners they'll have and how they staff shifts and so on. Any particular advice you might have for restaurant owners? I know they're all different types and sizes, but anything in particular come to mind?
Well, Leah, that's the beauty of all of this, in that there are several restaurants across the state, even here in Maricopa County, that have decided we're going to have a wait and see approach to this. We want to make sure that we understand what the consumer demands are going to be, what they expect to see in the restaurant. We want to understand how many people are going to come out and fill our booths and come in through our doors, and how many are reluctant. So especially chef-driven restaurants, some have decided we're going to stick with to-go because that's really suiting us well. We're going to continue to do that for the next few weeks. And there's nothing wrong with that. I completely understand and respect the restaurateur's decision to do that. And that's why, in working with Governor Ducey's office, we created some guidelines that were very flexible. We didn't want to be overly prescriptive and hurt the small guy at the big guy's success, or hurt the big guy at the little guy's success. So it's hard to do that, but I want to make sure that your participants today understand that we created this with flexibility that would work best for them in their restaurant, and there is no right or wrong way.
Yeah, and certainly I'm sure that they appreciate that, because one set of requirements would certainly not fit all the different businesses we have in Southern Arizona, and I can imagine throughout the state. And I want to remind folks, if you're on the call now and you have a question to ask, feel free to type it into the Q&A if you'd like, or into the chat. And we've got a few more minutes with Steve. We can address some of those questions. So Steve, wanted to ask, with your Maricopa County Supervisor hat on, what kind of COVID-19 response have you guys been tackling?
Well, we've actually been working with our Dr. Sunshine, who is just a brilliant woman and has guided us well during this difficult time. And we have paired her together with our emergency services division, which is Robert Rowley. And we're focused on what's happening here in Maricopa County and how can we make sure that we're spreading the word and not spreading misinformation. How can we make sure to work in our jail system to not have a pandemic just spread throughout our jails and start losing lives in a horrible, horrible way. So we've kind of been manning it on multiple fronts. So to make sure that for the greater good of Maricopa County and our residents, we are there for them. We're looking at trying to notify people through our contact tracing of who have you come in contact with. If you had COVID-19, making sure that that hasn't spread and just trying to raise awareness in that way. And then also working with our senior home communities, talking about best practices, making sure that we're finding opportunities for them, for those folks who may have COVID but have healed from it, getting them alternative housing to ensure that no one else will get affected and that they heal to their full potential. And then obviously we have our homeless community that we have to be mindful of. These are human beings and people we care for, and to make sure that we are taking our homeless population, spreading them out throughout the valley and other facilities, so we don't have rapid exposure and start having homeless people succumb to COVID-19.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I've heard many of similar discussions happening in counties throughout the state, and I think that's so important. At the Arizona Corporation Commission, we've really been focused on customer relief. We had an open meeting last week, which was all online, of course, for safety, but we approved a refund of energy efficiency surcharge dollars. So in APS territory up in Phoenix and in the areas they cover, that was some $36 million being refunded to customers. I was very proud to push through the amendment that would occur in June, in 1 month, so they could have the greatest impact. For those in TEP territory, that was about 8.2 million that will be refunded in the month of June, again from energy efficiency surcharge funds. And it's not enough, but it's a start. And I think beyond that, we're focused on low-income programs and energy saving programs, and encouraging folks to reach out to their utilities now, not to wait if they're having financial challenges. We've not seen unemployment numbers like this since the Depression, I think I've heard. So we have a lot of people hurting, and they need to work out payment plans and work with their utilities and not sit on this so that it continues to build and we have real financial challenges at the end of COVID-19. So working with a lot of different constituency groups.
That's great.
Thanks. And we have another question, Steve, with your restaurant hat on. Would there be any updates on the potential May 15th end to temporarily relax liquor laws with respect to alcohol to go out of restaurant and bars?
I know that this has been a very hot topic, and rightfully so. We have folks that are big believers in this and love it, and we have those that have a 6 license, which allows you to do this already, who are concerned about it devaluing your license. And we certainly can appreciate that and understand that. That being said, we intend and we have encouraged and asked Governor Ducey's office to extend the delivery of to-go alcohol through the rest of 2020. We understand that it's very popular with restaurateurs, especially 12 licensees, which primarily make up our casual dining segment. But we are hopeful and believe, and Governor Ducey's office understands how successful this has been. For not only the restaurateur, but the consumer. Consumers really are loving this. So I think it's going to be here. My hope is it's going to be here for the rest of the year. I do want to be mindful and respectful of those restaurateurs who have 6 licenses and not to devalue that. But I think that's going to be a broader discussion probably in the next legislative
Yeah,
session.
that is a good point. So I guess they can, do you send out, I'm assuming, regular communications from the Arizona Restaurant Association? Can people sign up for newsletters to hear about different activities?
Yes, we do. We during this crisis, the past 7 weeks, on a daily basis, as we get an update, we would send it out. Obviously, things have calmed down somewhat in recent 2 weeks, but it's all available on our website.
Okay, thank you. That was a good question. And wanted to bounce back to your Maricopa County Supervisor hat, Steve. I know that you're also running for reelection at this time. Do you want to tell folks what your website is or how they might be able to support you if they live in Maricopa County?
Well, that would be great, and thank you. Yes, this is going to be my third term, which I'm grateful to the voters and constituents of District 2 for supporting me the way they have. And as you know, coming from the chamber background and what you've been able to do in your role there, not only as a business leader, but also as now an elected official, it's nice and rewarding to be able to see what you can do in that capacity. And what we've been able to do in Maricopa County is really bring that business mindset to government. We recently converted a one-time jail in downtown Phoenix. It was going to require us to shut down the whole city block, to tear the building down. It was going to be very disruptive. And we actually were able to convert it to office space for the county attorney. And people kind of chuckle and laugh when they hear that. But it actually has worked very, very well. And it's right next to the courthouse, so it's completely user-friendly as it relates to just daily activity between the county attorney's office having to go and utilize our courts. So it's been a great success. So if those who are participating in today's webinar would want to learn more about what we've been able to do and accomplish, they can certainly go to my website, which is chucriaz.com, and that's CHUCRIAZ.com. Thank you for asking.
No, certainly, Steve. And I also wanted to remind folks that I'm running for reelection. I was appointed by the governor to this seat in May of 2019. So it's now been a year. I've learned so much about our utility industry and really applied my small business experience. I'm also the only commissioner on our 5-member board that's not in Maricopa County. So I've really been championing a lot of issues in Southern Arizona and rural Arizona and bringing that perspective to the Corporation Commission. I also have to run for reelection to hold my seat. I would appreciate everybody's support, and I'm a clean elections candidate, so even a $5 donation, I have to collect 1,500 of those to qualify for clean election funding, and that's at voteforleah.com, voteforlea.com.
You've got my vote, Leah.
I'm sorry, Steve, what was that?
I said, you've got my vote.
Thank you very much. Yeah, because I am running statewide, so any voter throughout the state of Arizona would appreciate their support. Well, I want to thank you again, Steve. Any last minute comments or advice you have for business owners or restaurateurs that are on the phone?
Yes, I would just share with them that please look at our Arizona Restaurant Strong.com site. If you have displaced workers, we've really utilized a lot of the money already. We anticipate having some more donations come in, but I know that this has hit our industry terribly, terribly hard. And I want to make sure that we're able to help them through these grants that we've been offering. And I hope that if they have an employee or someone that may be unaware or still can't come back to work, that they can go ahead and utilize this grant process as hopefully a help to them.
Thank you. And say the website one more time, please.
It's Arizona Restaurant Strong.com.
Okay. ArizonaRestaurantStrong.com. I think that'll be very helpful. And I just want to thank you again for your time this afternoon, Steve. I know that restaurants are a major portion of Arizona's economy, and it's a way in which a lot of people will judge or rate how our economy is coming back, whether it's slow and steady or sluggish. You know, I think we're very worried about our restaurant industry. So I appreciate your expertise on that, the almost 20 years you've served as the president of the Arizona Restaurant Association, and I appreciate your friendship too. So thank you again for calling in and participating. And for those that might have additional questions for Steve or need some information, you can reach out to me via my website at voteforleah.com, and I'll be sure to get those to him. But thanks again and have a wonderful evening.
Likewise, and thank you for having me. Really, you too.
So thank you. Good night, everybody, and be safe.